Welcome to the Effortless English Show with the world's #1 English teacher, AJ Hogue, where AJ's more than 40 million students worldwide finally learn English once and for all, without the boring textbooks, classrooms, and grammar drills. Here's AJ with a quick piece to help you learn to speak fluent English effortlessly.
I'm AJ Hogue, the author of Effortless English. Learn to speak English like a native. Join my VIP program at effortlessenglishclub.com. effortlessenglishclub.com. Welcome. Effortless English Business Club show tonight. Business Club. So we'll be talking about money and business. And in fact, we'll be connecting our topic to our book club because we're also doing a money and business book right now with our book club. Our book club book is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. So tonight I'm going to play a little short segment, a short piece, a short quote from Robert Kiyosaki talking about assets and liabilities as usual, and specifically your house or your apartment. Then I'm going to tell you how to live rent-free. It's a very simple strategy, a simple technique to eliminate that expense. It's one of the biggest expenses that most people have. Number one is probably taxes, right? If you make any amount of money, taxes are your biggest expense. And then number two, for most people, is their housing, which is an apartment rent or a house loan. They're both very expensive. So if you can eliminate that expense, if you can live with zero rent or a zero house loan, essentially living for free in your home, that is a big improvement for your finances. It's a big step towards your baseline. It's a big step towards financial freedom. Now, again, we're live on Facebook, so hi to everybody. Live on Facebook. Now, as always with the show, when I'm doing the live shows, I'll take your comments and your questions later in the show. At the beginning of the show, I'll be talking about this topic. And then later in the show, I'll come back and I'll look at your questions and your comments. So if you're watching live, please be patient. Live on Facebook today. Of course, the recordings of the shows are always added to both YouTube and the audio podcast. So YouTube and the audio podcast get this recording. So if you can't watch live, don't worry about it. Recordings are always on YouTube. They're always on my blog at effortlessenglishclub.com. And always on the audio podcast. Now remember, the audio podcast listeners get something extra. They get some of my audio-only shows. That's probably half of my shows. Half of my shows, more than half, probably, are only audio. So you need to subscribe to the audio podcast. If you don't subscribe to the audio podcast, you are missing more than half of the Effortless English Show. So if you say you want more, well, get that audio podcast. Don't miss it. You're missing a lot if you're only watching videos. All right, let's go to Robert Kiyosaki. So I've got a little short clip from Robert Kiyosaki. Looks like it comes from one of his speeches about houses and assets. So let's listen. It's about 20 seconds long, and then we'll talk about it.
Because I said, your house is not an asset. So in today's world, if you want to be rich, you have to know the difference between assets versus liabilities. One of the reasons so many people are struggling financially today is simply because they're calling their liabilities assets, such as your house is not an asset.
Okay, very simple. Your house is not an asset. And one of the problems with people's finances, one reason people struggle, have problems with money, is because they're confused about these two, assets and liabilities. In our book club shows, we have been talking about these two words a lot. These two words are right at the center of Robert Kiyosaki's book, Assets and Liabilities. These are the two most important things to understand in that Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. And Robert Kiyosaki, here in this clip, he's saying that the reason so many people struggle is they are confused about these two. Things which are actually liabilities, people think they are assets. Of course, liabilities are things that take money away. They reduce your income. They take money out of your bank account. Assets add money into your bank account. And then he finishes again. He's at the beginning and at the end, he says the same thing. Your house is not an asset. Your house is not an asset. Why does he repeat this so much? He repeats it in the book. He repeats it in almost every interview I see him do. For 20 years, he keeps repeating this same line. Your house is not an asset. Your car is not an asset. Your house is not an asset. Your car is not an asset. I mean, he's probably said this thousands of times, tens of thousands of times. So he obviously thinks it's important. The reason he thinks it's important is because so many people are confused about this. So many people believe that their house is an asset. In fact, so many people believe their house is their number one asset, their most important asset. Right? They think their house is an investment. But it's usually not. It's not a good investment. That's what he's saying. It's another way to say it. It's not a good investment. Most people think, oh yeah, my house, it's valuable, right? My house is worth a lot of money. But he's saying, no. It's a liability. It takes money out, right? You have to pay every month to the bank or to your landlord every month. If you buy a house, you still pay every month because you have a big loan. Most people do. Or if you have an apartment, you pay every month to the owner of the apartment. In both cases, you are paying money out. Therefore, it's a liability. And liabilities are not good for us. Some are necessary. A lot of them are not necessary. But they all take money away from us. They all reduce our money. And that's the problem. So the question becomes then, how can we reduce or eliminate this liability, this expense? So instead of our house being a liability, how can we make it an asset, or at least make it so it's neither one? It's neutral, right? It's no cost at all, zero cost. So there's a nice little strategy I've thought about, and I found it in another book I was reading recently where a guy mentioned it and talked about it in detail, a whole chapter about it. And he used the phrase hybrid housing. Hybrid housing. Now, different countries are different, so I don't know in your country what the situation is. But basically, the idea of hybrid housing is that, let's say you're ready to buy your own house, okay? So if you're renting an apartment, it's a liability. I mean, I rent an apartment right now, although our rent is very, very cheap. We keep our liability very low, cheap. Our expense very, very cheap. But let's say finally ready to go buy a house. So most people go buy a house and they spend money and they get the big loan and they spend money for, it's called a down payment. You have to give the bank, a big amount of money in the beginning, and then you pay them every month. So it's a liability. That's not good. It's a big expense. How can you get rid of that expense? And so a lot of people, you have to live somewhere, right? You have to live somewhere. Now, of course, that my famous experiment, I lived in a car and then I lived in a van to eliminate this expense. Most people don't want to do that. Honestly, I don't want to do that right now either. So what's a much more comfortable way to give yourself free housing? Well, what you do is when you buy your first house or condo, whatever you're buying, you do something called hybrid housing. So you buy something that allows you to divide it into two living areas, right? One area you will live in, you and your family. The other area you will rent. It might just be one room with a bathroom and a tiny little kitchen. Or in the United States, we have things called duplexes. That's where it's basically a house. usually kind of a rectangle, kind of wide. And then they just, in the middle, they divide it into two. So it's like a house divided into two parts. Like there's a big wall that goes through the middle. So they're separate living areas, completely separate. That's a great example. And another nice thing is a lot of duplexes in the United States are fairly inexpensive, fairly cheap. They're not so expensive. So the idea is what you do, instead of buying just one big house and then living in it, then it's an expense. Then you're just paying. You're not making any money from it. You're just paying, you're paying, you're paying, you're paying. You're losing money every month. So instead what you do, you buy a duplex, for example. You live in half. You need to live somewhere. Right? But then the other half you rent to someone else. Fix it, make it nice enough so that you can... The idea, the goal is you want the rent from one half to pay for the loan every month, to pay the loan payment every month, to pay for the bank every month. So basically, the people who rent from you, right, they'll be your neighbors, the people who are living in the other half of the house, they will be giving you enough rent to pay for the bank loan each month. Which means you don't have to pay for it. So it means you have zero payment every month. Nothing. Because the other people are paying it for you. But the cool thing is, you get to stay in the other half for free, basically rent free, and you also are going to own that house. So you could sell that house, possibly make money from it later. Or you could move and rent both halves and then be making money from it. That would also be a possibility. So it's a great kind of middle ground, right? Some people want to do real estate investing. So they'll buy a house and they rent it to other people and try to make money. But then you still have to live somewhere. So where do you live? Well, then if you live in your own house, you're losing money again. So this is a kind of a in-between. If half is rental real estate, you're renting to someone else, just enough to cover the expense. So it basically means your housing expense goes down to zero. It's a nice simple strategy that's more low cost, right? It's lower cost. If you try to do a full rental real estate, then you have to buy two places, right? You have one for yourself to live in and then another one to rent to someone else. That requires more money, requires more loans. But if you just combine the two and kind of on a small level, maybe you're not making money every month, but you're also not paying money every month. It's a nice technique to really drop your expenses, to cut your expenses. What's another way you could do this? You could do something like Airbnb, Booking.com, these different kind of websites where you can just rent out like something very small. I use Airbnb, Booking.com. I use those services a lot when I travel. And many times I'll stay in a place and it's a similar place. It's like a small house and they just make a little wall and it's basically one large room and they put a refrigerator, they put like a little stove, a little cooking area, and then it has a bed and a bathroom and that's all. So it's basically a large room with a bathroom that they've changed a little bit so somebody can live in there. And then they just rent it out on Airbnb or Booking.com or something like that, Expedia, and then people are paying per day, right? Instead of per month, they're paying per day. But the same thing, they get income from that room. And if you do well, you will make enough to pay for the rest of your house every month. So again, you will be living rent-free, loan, payment-free, thanks to this one room. It's another good method that you can use. You might even be able to do this in a condo, depending on how big it is and the situation. But this is a kind of a lower cost, simpler way to cut that very big expense, that big liability of housing, of where you live. So it's the combination of you live in part and then you rent another part. And the key thing is that when the part you rent, you want them to be completely separate, right? You don't want to have to, it's not like they're not living in your house with you. You don't want to deal with them, right? You want privacy for your family. So you're going to have to spend maybe a little bit of money to, put in a new wall or some new walls. You might have to add a bathroom for the side you're renting out. You might have to spend a little money to redesign it a bit. But then hopefully you can make enough money from the rental that your housing for you and your family becomes essentially free. Essentially free. Zero expense. It's a great first step for financial freedom. You cut your housing expense. Imagine how much money you save every month if you had zero rent. So guess what then? After that, you've got that extra money, the money you used to use for rent or house payments. Now you just keep it. So what do? You keep it, you save it, and then you buy more assets. Then you could maybe save and buy another house only to rent to other people. Now you're making money. Or you save that extra money from your rent and you buy stocks and bonds, or you use it to start a business, whatever. You decide the assets you want to buy. But the point is that suddenly, maybe you're paying $300, $400, $500, $1,000 or more every month on rent or a house payment. And suddenly that's yours. You keep it. You keep it. You don't give it to a bank. You don't give it to a landlord. You keep it now because the other people are renting from you. They are paying that. Now you have all that extra money every month. This is a common question I get. People always ask me, AJ, how do I make money to start a business? How do I get the extra money? Well, this is one great technique to do it. So I highly encourage you to consider this strategy. I'm considering it myself. If the time comes when we want to buy a house, we may do this. We've talked about doing this, having a room or a section that we might rent to tourists or rent to a student or rent to another family, whatever, and therefore drop our housing expenses to nothing, zero. All right, as I said, I am live on Facebook, so we'll go to questions and comments here in a minute. Now, today I did an audio podcast, so those of you who are only watching video, I'm going to remind you again, subscribe to the audio podcast. It's today's audio podcast, 40 minutes, 40 minutes I talk about. In fact, I talk about a new language learning technique that I found. A language learning technique I think could be very helpful teaching your children how to speak English. So if you want to hear about this new technique, you need to subscribe to my audio podcast because I only talk about it on the audio podcast. I'm not going to talk about it tonight on the video podcast. So again, just get a podcasting app. There are so many podcasting apps. TuneIn, Podcast Addict, iTunes, there's one called something Cast. I don't know. There's so many of them, okay? There's many. They're all free. Get a podcasting app. Search for Effortless English Podcast and subscribe. It's simple. Very simple. All right, let's go to some questions and comments. Now, the first I'm going to do from Twitter. That's the best place to contact me normally if you have questions or comments. Now, be patient. Sometimes they'll send me a question on Twitter and then they get upset. Why didn't you answer my question? Well, I get busy sometimes. Sometimes I can't answer every single one every single day because now I'm getting more and more and more. More and more people are listening to the Effortless English Show. More and more people are following me on Twitter, and then more and more people are sending me questions and comments. So I try to answer most of them, but sometimes I get busy. So don't get upset if I miss your comment or your question. Just wait a couple days, and then ask me again. That's all you need to do. No need to get upset. There's a nice comment from Emmanuel on Twitter. He says, I totally agree that motivation is the essence for all of us. So the essence, the most important thing for all of us is motivation. He's talking about all of us, all of Effortless English family, all of us English learners. Then he says, let's encourage and care for each other, as we are always doing that. So other people who are feeling dejected, which means down, depressed, sad, that they will feel loved and supported by us, and their low energy will go up little by little. Now that is a good example of leadership from Emmanuel. Right? He's basically encouraging you, everybody, all of the Effortless English family, all of our community around the world, encouraging you to encourage each other, to help each other, right? It mentions that, yes, sometimes some of us get, you get frustrated, you get sad, your energy drops. So we need to help each other, encourage each other, so that if somebody's feeling down, then we help to bring them back up again. So, good comment. I agree. Now, on the screen, I'm going to put the name of the app, one of the podcasting apps, Tune In. Also on the screen, I'm going to put my Instagram. And on the screen, if you're watching, again, I've got my Twitter. So I'll read them. If you're just listening, here they are. This is how you contact me. So, podcasting app. If you're listening, you're already listening to the podcast, so you don't need that. You already have it. But if you're only watching, use the Tune In app is the one I recommend, but you can use any app. There are many, many. My Twitter is AJ Hogue. That's where you ask questions to me directly. AJHOGE. I don't do YouTube comments. Don't like their system. It's too slow. It's too difficult. So I usually don't allow YouTube comments anymore. So if you have a comment or a question, you should contact me on Twitter, AJHOGE. And I'm also on Instagram now. Official Instagram, Effortless English Club. Effortless English Club on Instagram. All right. Let's go to the comments and questions. Let's remove these so you can see them. All right, we have Michelle. Many people can't resist spending money. Indeed. Yes, indeed. They think they will have much time to save for it in the future. They think, but they're wrong. Well, that is a good point. This is a common problem. It's self-discipline is what it really is, right? Self-discipline. People can't resist spending money. So I'll say, go to your baseline, right? Cut your expenses as low as possible. If you make more money, don't spend more money. Instead, save the extra. All of this requires self-discipline, self-control. You have to control yourself. You can't just, I gotta have it. I gotta buy. Spending. And Michelle is exactly right. Lots of people have zero self-control. So they're just spending. They make money, they spend it. If they have $10 in their pocket, they spend $10 that day, right? Or that month. If they make $1,000 a month, they spend $1,000 a month. If they make $10,000 a month, they spend $10,000 a month. No self-control. And this is true of people making a lot of money and people making little money. All different levels, it doesn't matter. A lot of people have no self-control with money. And this includes people who appear rich. They appear to have a high income, but they're spending it all. They're not saving it. They're not investing it. They don't buy assets. So, in fact, their financial situation is a little, we say shaky, a little bit weak, a little dangerous because of this, because they can't control their spending. So, absolutely correct. This is why I emphasize, I stress, I focus on as the first step your baseline. That means dropping your expenses as low as possible. In other words, it means controlling your spending is the first step. Control your spending, which equals self-control, self-discipline. Can you see what Robert Kiyosaki is talking about in his book when he says that at at the root of these money issues are mental and emotional issues. It's actually happening in your head and your mind. It's a self-control issue in the beginning. People focus on the money. Oh, I just need more. Give me more. But the real problem is their self-control. They lack self-control. They lack self-discipline. Giving them more money won't help them because they'll just spend it. It's actually an internal problem of self-discipline, self-control. This is why I believe simplicity, dropping your expenses as low as possible is so important because it teaches you and trains you to have self-control with your spending. No self-control, forget it. If you have no self-control with money, your businesses will fail. If you try to start a business, it will fail. Guaranteed, it will fail. If you're just spending money like crazy, your business is done. It's finished. In less than a year, your business will die if you have no financial self-control. Same with stocks and bonds. If you just buy, spending and buying like crazy stocks and not thinking about it and not having self-control, not knowing when you need to buy, when you need to sell, not having that control when you're feeling emotional, you're going to lose a huge amount of money, potentially. And it's the same with real estate. If you just buy, spend, and you don't have the control, you're not going to develop a good real estate investment or real estate business. They all require self-control and self-discipline. Just to learn how to do them requires self-control. To learn a business, how to do it, requires a lot of self-discipline. So do stocks and bonds. So does real estate. So this is why you got to start internally with yourself. I completely agree. All right. So Dalal again. Dalal, you always also with lots of good comments. We don't need so many things, so much stuff. But we're doing that to satisfy others and let them, kind of showing off, we would say in English. It just means they're just trying to show other people that. So Dalal's saying that. So Michelle is saying one problem is no self-control. People just buying because they don't have self-control. Oh, they want something, they buy it immediately. They can't stop themselves. That's one problem. Now Dalal's saying another problem is that a lot of people spend money to satisfy other people, to try to look good to other people. And I agree, this is another significant problem. So you can see this. You see this especially when people start getting a little money, when they start getting a little extra money for the first time. Then they can go crazy trying to look like they're rich, like trying to get the big car, the expensive car that really is too expensive, but they're doing it to try to look good. Or to get a house that really is too big for them, too expensive, but they get it to try to look good. Some people do it with clothes, some people do it with jewelry. There are many ways to do this. It is also a problem, I agree. But again, it will destroy you financially. This will, if not destroy you, it will certainly make you stressed out and you'll be kind of forever a slave to money. It's another problem. You can't be doing this for other people to look good. Doesn't matter. Warren Buffett's, not that Warren Buffett's perfect, but he's a famous example, so that's why I'm using him. But he's a billionaire and he dresses terribly. Okay, most of the time I've seen him, he doesn't dress very well at all. Who cares? I don't think he cares. All right. Back to we got a super long one here. Emmanuel, I'm going to have to wait on your next comment because it's so long, but I'll go through and check out. Well, Shadow here Hi, what is the best way to help children learn to speak English without getting boring? Listen to today's audio podcast. I will add it to the audio podcast in a couple hours. So check the audio podcast. I talk about one possible method today. Castbox, Emmanuel, thank you. Yes, again. Castbox is another one of the apps you can use for podcasting. That's the one I was trying to think of. Okay, so what else do we got? Lots of people saying hello from Jakarta. Lots of different countries. Brazil, of course. Vietnam, of course. Nice background. Oh, you like the light? Yep. Got a little background lighting now. All right. Good morning from Brazil, Fernanda. Very nice. Hello. Good. So we're getting lots of comments from different countries. Excellent. Shadow's another comment, a question about English here, which is whoops, sorry. Get the right comment here. Shadow. Why is English an international language? Well, I think we have to look at history for that. Why did English, or how did English become the international language? Well, what was the international language before English? There wasn't a completely international language, but I think probably French was the closest. Okay, so before English, it was French. Certainly in Europe, it was French. But because the Europeans had quite a lot of influence, overall, with the especially with the upper classes, right, diplomacy and the kings and the queens and the government people, all that, it used to be French. That's why we have this phrase lingua franca, which just means language French. But lingua franca now means the common language for everyone to use. So, of course, what happened was it's just a matter of politics and power. The British Empire grew bigger and stronger and around the world. And eventually the British became really the dominant, the number one colonial world power, right? And, of course, the British colony of the United States became a huge, big power. And after World War II, probably even starting with after World War I, the British Empire started falling apart, but the American Empire essentially replaced it. And once again, Americans also speak English. So you had these two world empires both speaking English. And as the communication technology developed, TV, phones, and of course, especially the internet, then English, with America being so dominant economically and with science and with diplomacy and many other things, English just sort of naturally became the lingua franca, right? The world language. And now it's to the point where it's what's called a network effect, where eventually, if a lot of people join one thing, one network, that eventually it becomes dominant, like a monopoly. And people start to join because everybody else is already joining. Facebook is a good example of this, okay? So why is Facebook, one of the top social media websites? Because it's the best? No, I don't think so. It's just because they got a large amount of people in the beginning. They had some help from the media. They had a lot of help from banks and people giving them tons of money for a long time. And eventually they beat MySpace. And so they just became the biggest. And suddenly they were the biggest. So, everybody, all your friends, all your family's on Facebook. And so you join Facebook, not because it's the best app, but because that's where everybody else is already. If you join a new app, your friends are not on the new app, right? Nobody you know is on the new app. So this is a disadvantage for the new app because everybody else is already on Facebook. And so Facebook just keeps getting bigger, 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 and growing because it has this network effect. And you could think, English kind of has that too, right? So with the British Empire, then the American, then the internet, that now so many countries are using English as the world language, to connect with. All of Europe for sure, but really all of the world at this point. So now it'd be very hard for another language to do that because everybody else is already using English. So if you want to choose one language for world travel, for world business, for most world communication, you're going to choose English. So even big countries, rising countries. It doesn't matter. You might, Spanish. Some people say Spanish maybe would be a big one, and it is a big one. Chinese is a big one, Russian, whatever. But still, those don't have the same network effect anymore. So I think that's why English wins. Okay. Emmanuel, thank you for writing this shorter. All right. Sorry for the long question. I'll make it shorter. My friend just got dismissed at his work. See, this is why work is not safe. They can cut you anytime they want. Now he is unemployed. The main problem, they always require him to submit a written paper. I'm not sure exactly what you mean. They always require him to show them a written paper. Do you think this is an obvious cause? He's an expert at doing his job, and yet they want it anyway. Are you talking about like a resume, perhaps? Something like that, application, resume. See, this is the thing. So resumes, applications, some people call them CVs. They're just for convenience for companies. It's just, honestly, those resumes, CVs, they're really more for eliminating people, right? Nobody gets hired because they have a good resume or a CV. Nope, they're not used to hire. They're used to cut. But lots of people get cut, they get eliminated. They don't get an interview because something on their CV looks bad, something on their resume looks bad, or they don't have enough experience or whatever. You have to realize these companies are kind of lazy, and you can imagine they get a lot of applications, if they're especially the big ones. And so they just need a fast way to reduce the number. If they have 100 people apply for a job, they don't want to interview 100 people. It's too much. It takes much too long. They want to interview maybe 5, maybe 10 if it's an important position, but they would prefer to just interview a few people and that's all. So how do they cut out the other 95? They need a fast way to do it. Resumes, applications, CVs, that's how they do it. They can just look at it really quickly, go through, oh, I don't like that, boom, throw it away. No interview for you. Okay. Next one, they look at it really quickly. Not enough experience. Boom. These are fast decisions they're making. They're not thinking deeply about that resume. They're not thinking deeply about your CV. Different people say different times, but it's something like 5 to 30 seconds is how long they look at your resume or your CV or your application. I think 5 is probably pretty short, but probably something like 30 seconds. If you're lucky, a minute, right? That's not much time. They're not carefully examining it. And when they are looking at it, they're mostly looking for the negative, not the positive. I mean, overall, if it's a good resume, they might say, oh, this one looks good. And they put it to the side. This person gets an interview. So the next step is an interview. They will not just hire you from the paper, okay? They'll give you an interview. They hire from interviews because they want to meet you. They need to get a feeling for your personality. So the key point with resumes, cover letters, CVs, applications, these written things, the key thing is just don't make mistakes. Don't put anything on there that might look bad, right? You just want to meet the requirements. That's all you need to do. You don't need to show them that you're super awesome and that you're the absolute 100% best. Don't try to be tricky with it, okay? It just needs to be solid, needs to be good. In the interview, that's where you kick butt. That's where you show them how great you are, how you are way better than everybody else. For sure you do that. On the CV, the resume, you just want to look good enough to get the interview. It's a step-by-step process with getting a job. And step one is you got to get their attention, positive attention, and their interest, just enough to get the job interview. That's all it is. You contact them, you get the job interview. Then in the job interview, you're giving a sales presentation, and that's where you're going to do your best job. Now, the other thing, another point about this is I don't like the idea. I really don't like applying for jobs. Even, of course, now I don't do it at all. I have my own business. But even back before, I don't recommend applying for advertised jobs so much. I mean, you can do it some. I mean, it won't hurt anything. But don't rely on that. Too many people only apply to jobs that are advertised. That's all they do. They only apply for a job that's advertised. So if you do that, guess what? You are competing now with hundreds, perhaps thousands of people. Because if the job is advertised, that means lots of people know about it and lots of people are sending their resumes. That's a very, very, very tough competition. Much, much better strategy is to contact companies yourself. Identify companies where you want to work. It doesn't matter if they have a job advertised or not. It's better if they don't, in fact. And you just start sending them letters and your resume, telling them, I'd like to come. I'd like to just talk about your company. I understand maybe you don't have a position now, but I'd like to learn more. And you start just making some connections. Now, you don't just do this with one. That's not enough. But if you do that with about 30 companies, here's what happens. One of those companies has a open position coming. They haven't advertised it yet. Nobody knows about it except for the company. So they're not getting lots of resumes. They're not getting lots of applications yet because they haven't advertised it yet. And suddenly, before they advertise the job, they get a letter from you with a resume. And what they're thinking is, I'll tell you exactly what they're thinking. They're thinking, wouldn't it be great if this person would, if we could hire them, if this is a good candidate, it would save us so much work, okay? We won't have to do all the advertising. Even if they do the advertising, if they can already interview you before that and decide they want you, it saves them so much work and effort. So you get in before everybody else with this method. That's why you go and you contact companies before they advertise. When they have no open positions that you know about, it doesn't matter. You still contact them anyway. And you don't contact just their human resources. Human resources, I apologize to any of you who work in human resources, but human resources sucks, okay? You want to avoid them. You want to go around them. You want to get directly to the person who will be your boss. Human resources, again, they're just a wall. They're there to eliminate people. They're there to follow a bunch of rules and laws and regulations. They don't hire. They're not the people who make the hiring decisions usually. So you want to get around them and get directly to the people who will be hiring you, right? The managers, the supervisors. So you're going to send. So how do you do it? You're going to have to call, get some information, do some research so you can get the name of these managers. And then you send them not just one letter, but a series of letters with your resume every time. And you do that with a lot of companies that you want to work for. And this works so well. I did it at the end of my career. It took me a while to figure this system out, but by the end of my career, the last 5 years or so of my working life, I started using this system, and oh my God, it's so much less stress. I started getting job interviews very, very easily because I was beating everybody else. I had very little competition. And of course, now I understand it's because I was behaving like a business person. I was marketing myself. I was doing marketing and sales. Most people trying to get a job, they don't think like business people. They don't realize that what they're doing is marketing and selling themselves. It's marketing and sales. That's all it is. You're just, instead of a product, it's you. But it's the same mentality. If you want to learn how to be great at getting jobs and job searching, study marketing and sales and start using the techniques of marketing and sales in your job searches. You'll have much, much, much better success, and it's much less stressful. Job searching is stressful. It's no fun. Nobody likes it. Okay, Asina's got another comment about assets. I think one problem that people don't buy assets is that they're afraid to lose their money. Yeah. They think they can get a job and earn money, and they do the same thing always, therefore they don't need to try something new. Well, as we discussed in the last book club, you don't have to quit your job. You can do both. And in fact, for most people, doing both is the best approach, the best strategy. So I do understand that fear, right? It's a very scary thing if you think, I'm going to quit my job and start a new business. Ugh. And then people immediately, the fear, if the business fails, then I have no income and I'll starve to death and die. Something like that. Okay, I understand that fear. But what if you just can keep your job, keep the job you have now, cut your expenses. Now you have extra money. You're saving extra money. It's actually less scary, right? You have more extra money. You have a safer position now. And then you take that extra money. It's extra. You're not using it. And what you do is you create a little side business, a little part-time business. Maybe you just work on that business on the weekends or in the evenings. Now you've got no risk. No risk. Okay, maybe you might lose some of your savings if the business is a big disaster. If you're not smart about taking care of the risk, possibly you could lose some of that savings. But you still have your job, so it's really not that scary. On the other hand, you have a very good potential that if your side business is successful, now you're going to have a lot more money coming. You've got the money from your job, as always, plus now the side business is bringing in extra money. Now you're going to have even more saved every month. So what do? Well, you put that money in your business, grow it. You start another business on the side. You buy real estate and rent it. There are many different possibilities. But this is how it grows. This is how you do it with low risk. This is how you do it with very low risk, so you don't have fear. Also, today's topic, right? Some people are afraid of real estate investing. Oh, what if I can't rent it? What if I'm losing money? Well, if you're living in half of it, it's not a big deal. If the other half, if you can't rent it, then you're not really losing anything because now you just have to pay the house payment. But you usually are paying rent or a house payment anyway, so it's not more than normal. So you're not really risking anything. You're still going to have a place to live now. You can live in it. If you can't rent it, at least you're living in half of it. But so there's really no risk, very low risk. On the other hand, if you do get somebody in there and you start renting it and making some money coming in, then you have the possibility of living rent-free. No expenses for your accommodation, for your housing. Guess what? All that money is now yours. It's now extra. It's now savings. What are you going to do with the savings? What are you going to do with the extra money? You're going to invest it. You're going to buy assets. Maybe you buy another house and you rent it. Now you have more rental real estate income. Maybe you buy stocks. Maybe you start a side business. This whole time, you can still be working your normal job. So you do this in a low-risk way, Hasina, and there's nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear. That's what you do it smart. You do it smart. I understand that people fear risk. I do too. I'm super conservative about risk. I don't like risking my savings. I don't like risking my money at all. Don't like it. So if you do businesses in a smart way, if you do investing in a smart way, if you do these things in an intelligent way, you limit your risk. Can you possibly lose some money? Yes, but you limit it so you only lose small amounts. Just like, again, starting a business for the first time. Don't get a loan for $300,000 and try to start some huge business with no experience. That is crazy. And I know a lot of people do it, but it's crazy. You're risking huge amounts of money. Huge amounts of money with no experience is insanity. That is a crazy way to start a business. As I said, the example I gave in the past was, I've seen this happen in San Francisco where people will try to start a restaurant business in San Francisco for the first time. They have no restaurant experience. They don't know anything about the restaurant business. It is a tough, tough business. And it is a very expensive business. Okay? It costs a lot of money to set up a restaurant, make it nice. You got a lot of staff. You can't just have one person working in a restaurant. You have to have several staff. It's a big risk. What they usually do, they get big loans from banks and they spend all of their savings. And then they jump in and they realize, oh my God, the restaurant business is super, super difficult. And most of them go out of business. That is risky. That's a big risk. It's a big risk, and it's risking a huge amount of money, and it's also risking just time. It's, like I said, that kind of business is very, very difficult. I'm not saying don't do a restaurant, but don't do it first. Don't do it with no experience, right? You want to start, your first business should be something small and cheap. Effortless English was started, I think it was about $300. I started Effortless English with $300. So super low risk. If it failed, I lost $300. That's not such a big deal, okay? I had a part-time job at the time. I had $300 extra dollars. It was basically no risk at all. But look at the potential gain. 12 years later, I'm financially free. The risk was $300. The benefit potentially was complete financial freedom. That's the kind of investing you want to do. That's the kind of businesses you want to start, where the risk is tiny, but the possible gain is big. Real estate investing is a successful investment. It can be, but as always, you got to know what you're doing. It's not so much which one do you do, it's how do you do them, right? Businesses can potentially make huge amounts of money and be great investments, or you can lose a lot if you're not smart about it. And that is true for all of these. Thank you, Sukar. I'm a top fan. Yes, you are. Okay, this is a nice comment. I agree with it. Abu Bakar. One contributing factor is a lack of experience in life. You are right about this. We spend a lot. We do spend a lot of money, and later on we find out we're in big trouble financially. Yes. Another way to put this, it would be the school systems, right? That people aren't getting enough like real world experience. Especially, when they're younger. And then they just, I think, that's what I really, really believe strongly that it is such a good thing for young people to try to start a little side business, even something tiny. Even, I'm talking kids, 10-year-old kids, 12-year-old kids, just some little tiny, really a hobby. Not so they become rich. Maybe they will, but probably they won't. But just so they learn some of these ideas, some of these things, they learn to think about money in a completely different way, which will help them so much as they get older. That real world business experience, even if it's something simple, like selling candy or something, I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's such a big benefit, right? Because school is just book learning. How do you know if the book learning is true or not true? If you don't have any experience, you don't know. You have no way to judge that. You can't, so a lot of people just accept it all, and they find out sadly later that a lot of it is bullshit. A lot of it's nonsense. A lot of it's wrong. And a lot of, professors have this problem in universities where they are completely separate from the real world. So you have a lot of business professors who do not own their own businesses, who really don't know what they're talking about. They have no real world experience at all with business, and yet they're teaching people about business, and that's just a disaster. This is why business students get out of school with a master's in business, an MBA, and they still have no idea how to start a business. They have no idea at all. They have no useful business skills, none. They just wasted 6 years studying a bunch of theories from professors who also have no idea. It's crazy. I think that's why Steve Jobs quit college, okay, and started what is now the largest company in the world. He didn't need a business degree to do that. In fact, a business degree would have hurt him. Okay, this is a hard question. And it's written in the, it looks like the Russian, possibly Ukrainian language, so I absolutely cannot read it. So sorry I can't read your name. I don't know if I can give you advice about this question. How do you ask your boss for a raise, a rise in salary? When is it best to do it? I never did this myself, so it's hard for me to give you advice. I'll tell you my approach, because I had a different approach to this, a different mindset, or a different way of thinking about it. What I did was this. I didn't like going and trying to beg from my boss or try to negotiate with a boss I'm not a good negotiator, so I don't like it. And trying to, you need to pay me more money. Well, maybe I am a good negotiator, actually, now that I think about it, because my technique is a classic negotiation tactic. What I would always do instead is I would always be looking for other jobs. Even if I was happy at my current job, I would still be contacting other companies and going in and talking to them and sometimes getting job offers. This gives you great power in negotiation, because what would happen is eventually I would get offers for more money. So now, instead of just going to my boss, I think you should give me a 10% raise, and they say no, what can you say after that? Nothing. Well, you have a choice, quit or nothing. But it's very different if you go in and you say, I'd like to talk to you. You sit down with your boss and you say, look, I just want to tell you, I've actually talked to this other company. They have offered me a higher salary. And I would like to stay here at this company. I would prefer to stay here. I blah, blah, blah. Say nice stuff. I like you as a boss. You're great. The company's great. Blah, blah, blah. But, the money is important, and I really would like to get that extra money. Something like that. And then what? Then now you have the strong negotiating position because you have another offer. So if your boss says, no, not going to pay you that, you can just say, well, goodbye. I'm 2 weeks. I'll be gone in 2 weeks. Sorry. And you call the other company and you tell them, I'll take the job. Or your boss, if your boss likes you and your boss really wants to keep you, now your boss has pressure because now your boss realizes, ooh, I have to pay him or her more, or I'm going to lose him to this other company. You're in a better position. So that's what I would do. That's always be job searching. Always be job searching. Never stop. This is another thing I used to teach in one of my business classes. Always be job searching. Too many people, they wait until they lose a job. They wait until they lose their job. Then they start job searching. Oh, now you're under huge stress. Now you have huge stress. You need the job and you need it soon. Your money's going down. Oh my God. That sucks. It's so much stress. It's much easier to look for jobs when you already have a job. It's even easier when you have a job that you like, because then there's zero pressure. You don't need to leave. You don't even want to leave your current job. But you keep looking anyway, because you never know. You never know. Your company might suddenly cut. They have to cut expenses and they suddenly tell you, sorry, you got to go. Or, like this question, you want to increase your salary. You want to get a better position. So just always be job searching. Always. You never stop job searching. It's just part of your normal career. You're always sending letters and resumes to other companies. You're always talking to them. And when you take, you can tell those other companies, you can say, look, I currently have a job and, I'm looking to improve my position, but I'm fairly happy where I am. So you don't lie to these other companies. You tell them the truth. And if your boss finds out, you can also tell them the truth. You can say, well, yeah, you know what? I always do this. I always keep my options open. I always talking to other, I have to look out for my own career. So I'm always open to talking to other companies. But right now I'm very happy with this company. But look, you're not a slave. They don't own you. They don't own you. You should always be looking. You're like a freelancer. You're like, Cristiano Ronaldo, okay? You can go to another team. You don't even have a contract like he does. He has a contract. He has to stay with one team for a while. You don't even have to do that. You can jump to another company anytime you want. We call this a free agent in sports. A free agent is a player who does not have a contract. So anytime they can go to another team if they want to. So like a superstar free agent, that's what you want to be as an employee. That's your best position. You're a superstar, meaning you're really good at your job. Companies want you because you're really good. And you're a free agent, meaning you're always talking to other companies. You're always aware. Just like, free agents in sports. A good example, LeBron James, just happened just recently. LeBron James, the basketball player, right? He's sort of famous for doing this. A lot of people don't like him because he does this. I understand the fans don't like him because he jumps teams all the time. But I understand, for him and the money, he's smart, right? He used to be with the Miami Heat. Then he's a free agent. So what does he do? He negotiates. Now he has a lot of negotiating power. He's good. Lots of teams want him. He went to the Cavaliers. Free agent again. So once again, what does he do? He tries to get all these teams trying to get him. So they all have to pay more money so that one of the teams can get him. Now he's going to the Lakers. That's a free agent. Well, you want to think like a free agent in your career. That's the position you want to get to. You want to be really good. You have to be good. If you suck at your job, then this won't work. Okay? But if you're good at your job, this is great. This works very well. Always a free agent. Always job searching. Always talking to companies. Okay, this is a great common question from Cardo. And I'm going to give a good answer for it. I wanted to start my business. I have wanted to start my own business for a few years. But still I couldn't decide what business is good for me. Common problem, common question. What should I do? Should I do this? Should I do that? Actually, I'm afraid. Just let me know. Is that normal or I need to be tougher and then decide? Both. It is normal. You need to be tougher and just decide. You just answered the question. They're all correct. Everything you said. Is it normal? Yeah, it's 100% normal. It's completely normal, of course. It's the new. It's the unknown. We are naturally afraid of the unknown. I was nervous and afraid before I started Effortless English. I was nervous and afraid before trying another job before that, another kind of company, freelancing thing that I tried several years before that, and that I failed at. It didn't work. So it's completely normal. Don't feel bad if you're nervous, if you're afraid to do this, because it's unknown. That's the only reason that you're afraid is it's unknown. And when something's unknown, all these crazy fears start coming up in your head and worries and everything. So yeah, of course, don't feel bad about it. It's totally normal. But on the other hand, you also do need to just decide. I don't know if it's toughness or it's just jumping. Even if you're afraid, you just do it. You just got to do it. Okay? Here's the thing about business. Too many people get stuck in the idea, the first step, the idea step. And they're so focused on the idea. Oh, I got this genius idea. It's the idea. They think the idea is going to save them. And then from the idea, they want to plan, the business plan. And some people will try to write out a business plan, pages, 10 pages, 20 pages, 30 pages, 100-page business plan. And they try to imagine every possible problem and develop the product or the service perfectly and try to think of all the potential problems. And then I'll do this and they just think and think and think and analyze and plan and they plan and they plan and they plan and they plan. And that is bullshit. It doesn't help. Okay, I mean, if you're trying to launch $1 billion company, yeah, you got to write a big business plan. Okay, but for most of us, we're one person, we're launching some little small business. You don't need that. What you just need to do is take action. You need to do it. You need to get in the game. That's how you figure out the problems. That's how you answer your questions. Right now, before you start, you have so many questions. What product should I do? Exactly. How much should I charge? What price? This is one. A lot of people, what price? And they're constantly thinking about it. You don't know what price. You have no idea until you do it. How do you know the price? You test it with real people. So you just launch your business and you charge $1,000 for your product. And nobody wants to buy and everybody says, $1,000 is too much. So what do? You adjust, you learn. All right, $500. You cut it. Now some people buy. Maybe $500 might be a good price. Then you might test out a few other prices. Maybe you test out $300, then you test out $700. And you just keep testing prices over time, and then you will find the price that gives you the most profit. That's how you do it. Forget trying to figure it out beforehand. You don't know, okay? Look, when I started Effortless English, it was very different than what it is now. Okay, the beginning website was very, very different than what I have now. Just like Apple Computer in the first year, making computers in their garage was very different than what Apple Computer is today. Okay, you learn from experience by doing the business. Okay, most of the success, most of the learning, most of the decisions happen by being in the game, by doing it, by making the mistakes, by trying something, it doesn't work, try something else. That didn't work, try something else. Ooh, that works, cool, let's do this more. That's the process, okay? Too many people, they spend way too much time thinking, reading books. That's useful somewhat, but you have to eventually just say enough and boom, jump in and just get in there and start trying things. And that's true for all of these, by the way. It's true for businesses. Same with real estate. If you want to get into real estate, start small, keep it safe, keep the low risk, like the topic for today. But get in there and start doing it and learning as you're doing. It's the doing that teaches you. Without the doing, you're just spinning around in your head forever, waiting for the perfect genius idea that never will come. It's not the idea that's important. It's how you do it that's important. It's getting into the game. It's the business skills of marketing and sales, pricing, connecting with customers, customer service, all of those things. And you're not going to learn that unless you do it. All right, I see. I'll do one more, I guess, and then time to go. I'll see you again. I always talk about business ideas with my friends. Mistake number one. They always tell me it will not work, and I must forget about it and continue with my education. Get a job and earn money. think they are afraid because they are used to the usual methods of education and jobs. Yes, stop doing it. Stop discussing with your friends. Stop discussing with your family. Stop trying to get approval from other people. Just do it. Do it. Okay? That's all. Put that Nike poster on your wall. Just do it. Doesn't matter what your friends think. What do they know? Are your friends successful business people? Have they successfully started their own businesses? If yes, then maybe listen to their advice a little bit. They might know something. If no, they know nothing at all, and they're just nonsense opinions which mean nothing. Okay? So you have to listen, you have to realize this about the opinions about things. Look at the person giving you the advice. Do they know anything about it? Are your friends successful business people? Are they successful entrepreneurs? Yes or no? If no, why are you talking to them about it? Why are you discussing your ideas with them? Don't do it. It's a waste of time, especially because they're not supporting you. They're not encouraging you. Stop doing it. Find some other entrepreneurs. Find some successful entrepreneurs. Talk to them. Those are the people who know what they're doing. Those are the people who might have a useful opinion for you. But more importantly, just do it. What are you waiting for? Do it. Just start it small. Start it part-time. Do something that requires little to no money. One of the best kinds of businesses you can do are service businesses. A service business can often be started with no money at all. A product, sometimes you have to create the product. Sometimes that costs some money. But a service, like, I'll give you a simple example, washing cars. You could start a car wash service where you personally wash people's cars. You could just start that with basically no money, soap and a sponge, okay? And then what are you going to do? You get your soap and you get your sponge and you say, I am now officially the car wash business, right? Bill's Car Wash, whatever your name. Hasina's Car Wash. So you say, I've got my business, I've got my soap, I've got my water, I have my bucket, I have a place, some location where I can wash the cars. I am now a business person. And what's the first thing you're going to realize? The first question you're going to ask? Well, if you're smart, here's what the question you're going to ask is, how do I get customers? It's the first problem you're going to find after you decide what you're doing. How do I get the customers? How do I get people to know about me? Nobody knows who I am. You might be the best car washer in the world, but nobody knows about it. How do they find out about you? That's called marketing. You're going to have to learn it. You're going to go read books about marketing. More importantly, you're going to have to try to do marketing. You're going to do it and experiment and try so that people will start coming to you, asking you to wash their car. And then you're going to have to think about price. What's my price? Again, you experiment. You try $10, you try $50, you try different prices, and you figure out what works for you. You learn it by doing it. So stop talking, start doing. And that is the end of our show for today. So remember, join my VIP program, Learn to Speak English Powerfully and Persuasively. We got a great new VIP lesson this month. I think you'll enjoy it. If you join now, you'll get that lesson. Go to effortlessenglishclub.com to join my VIP program. Again, that is effortlessenglishclub.com. Join my VIP program. Lots of love to you. See you next time.